sunspots number and how it affects human life and activities on Earth.
Hello viewers, welcome back to Machine Art channel, and if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Today we are going educational, guys. It is not the normal DIY do it yourself kind of thing. We are going to be educating ourselves about a phenomenal, all right? This phenomenon is actually in the field of technical geography, space science in particular. All right, we are going to be talking about an aspect of the sun. The sun is a star, and when you talk about stars, you can talk about the galaxy. The galaxy is a collection of stars, all right? A star is simply formed from dust and gas, and the remains of the dust and gas is what forms the planets. So we are talking about an aspect of the star. Now we are focusing on our sun. Our sun is a star, and together with the planets revolving around it, and with the satellite, that is the moon or moons revolving round the planet, we have the solar system. We are talking about nothing but sunspots. All right, you don't already know that, apart from knowing the layers of the sun, which is made up of the core of the sun, the radiative zone, the convection or convectional zone. You talk about the photosphere, you talk about the chromosphere, and you talk about the corona. There is an aspect of the sun that forms on one of these layers of the sun. The aspect is called sunspot. Now, before I tell you the aspect or the layer of the sun in which sunspots are formed, what then is sunspot? Sunspot is simply speckles or dark spots that forms at the outer layer of the sun. Now, when we talk about the outer layer of the sun, we will be talking about the photosphere, the chromosphere, and the corona. Now, the layer of the sun in which sunspots forms on is called the photosphere. These dark speckles or dark spots that form on the photosphere actually form and makes it a cool spot of the sun. It's not as hot as the core of the sun. It's not as hot as the radiative zone. It's not as hot as the convection or convectional zone of the sun, but rather is somewhat cool. But do you know it can lead to a lot of things? All right. The photosphere itself is made up of two layers, the inner and the outer layer. The inner layer is called the ombre, and the outer layer is called the penumbra, guys. So these sunspots, when they increase, it's simply telling you that the level of magnetic field activity in the sun is increasing. When it is decreasing, you should simply understand that the level of magnetic field activity in the sun is doing what? Is decreasing. You understand? Now, what will happen? How does sunspot affect human life on Earth and even human activity? There are some things that sunspot can cause in space before affecting human life, right? Some of those things are things like solar flares. You know, if you've ever heard of solar we call coronal mass ejection. Like you heard it, is a sudden bomb blast, a sudden outbreak of bomb. You understand? Explosion in the sun at the coronal layer of the sun. That's what we term as coronal mass ejection. Now, sunspots operate at the period of 11 years. Sunspot has a life cycle. Now, let's take a look on what sunspot is or are. Take a look at what coronal mass ejection is. Take a look at what solar flare is before we continue.
All right, guys, this is an example of the sun and its layers, an example of sunspots. You can see the dark speckles or the spots on the layer of the sun called the photosphere. You can also see one of the causes of the increase of sunspot numbers, such as solar flare and coronal mass ejection. And you can also see how it affects the rate of evapotranspiration. Let's continue with the lecture.
All right, guys, now that you are back and we are back, one of the aspects of in which sunspots, the increasing sunspots number affects us is simple: global warming. When there is an increase in sunspots number, it has the ability to deplete the ozone layer. The ozone layer is at the stratosphere. You know, when you begin to talk about the layers in the outer space, you talk about the atmosphere, you talk about the troposphere, you talk about the stratosphere, talk about the mesosphere, talk about the thermosphere, the exosphere, and so on. All right. So we are now talking about the stratosphere. The stratosphere is like a blanket that shields us from very dangerous rays of the sun, like the UV rays. When the stratosphere is depleted, the protection it offers to us, like blocking some of the dangerous rays of the sun that would have reached us directly on earth and causing intensive heat up, that will not happen. All right. It is not just cutting down of trees like deforestation, and it is not just carbon monoxide, like releasing carbon monoxide into the atmosphere that can deplete the stratosphere and cause global warming. Even the increase in sunspots number can do that. So, since there is a correlation between ozone layer depletion and sunspots, you see, that would be like a project topic if you want to really work on effect of solar flares on what? On the stratosphere, or effect of solar flare on ozone layer depletion. You will have to talk about sunspots. All right. Now, how do you combat this? What's the solution? You can talk about planting of trees. When you're cutting down trees, ensure that if you cut one, you plant one. Make the environment green. All right. Then you can talk about what? Preventing the release of too much carbon monoxide into the atmosphere. Make sure that whatever you're going to do that will release smoke into the atmosphere must be converted. Convert this smoke to harmless smoke. All right? When you're burning your refuse, you can endeavor to burn the refuse in incinerators. All right? Now, one of the effects of sunspots number, the increase of sunspots number on humans and human activity, is called evapotranspiration. When the number of sunspots begin to increase, guys, it is going to lead to intensive escape of water, both on plants and bare surfaces, as well as water bodies. You know, when we talk about geographic surfaces, we can talk about the vegetation outcover. We can talk about rocky outcrops. We talk about bare surfaces. We talk about water bodies. We can talk about the built environment. That's the structural environment. We talk about the aspect of housing and so on and so forth. So the increase in sunspot number can affect the vegetative or vegetation outcover by causing intensive high rate of evapotranspiration. Now, when you say evapot and you say transpiration, what do you mean? You simply join two words together, meaning evaporation and transpiration. When you talk about evaporation, you're talking about escape of water from surfaces, such as bare ground. You're talking about what? You're talking about water bodies. Then when you talk about transpiration, you're talking about escape of water from the tiny holes on leaves of plants, which is called the stomata. All right. Now, when you talk about escape of water, if you have so much vegetation out cover around and there is increase in the rate of sunspots, what will happen? The water that escapes from the plants and their surfaces and even water bodies, does it all go to the atmosphere and condense? All right. It can also serve as moisture within the environment, and that is why you see that some places with high vegetation cover don't usually have what? Very high and dry intensive sunlight that can penetrate through your skin. You feel some sort of moisture, you're sweating, but even you know that there is moisture in the environment. All right. So you can do what? You can also relate sunspot. As a matter of fact, there was a project I covered at one point, and I related sunspot number and the rate of evapotranspiration. All right. One aspect in which sunspot affects human life is in the aspect of high UV rays. When you say high UV radiation or high UV rays, you are simply talking about ultraviolet rays. What are some of the ways in which ultraviolet rays can affect you? It can cause skin cancer. You understand? You see people walking around with sunburn, and the worst thing is when humans now put chemicals on their skin, it will lead to sunburn. When there is a reaction between the sun and the chemical that you've applied on the skin, you have what? You have sunburn. It can also lead to acid rain. You understand? So you can relate this as a project. In time to come, I will be teaching you, if you want to use this as a project, how to download sunspots number data, how to download evapotranspiration data, how to go about it, relate these phenomena and make it make sense. Sunspots can also affect the level of rainfall you have. When you talk about the difference in rainfall, it can affect rainfall.
Right, guys, this is an example of the representation of the stratosphere, the representation of evapotranspiration, and the representation of ultraviolet rays and its effects.
So, hope you enjoyed these little lectures. I wish to go on and on and on, but I don't want to bug you. I will be breaking these in series as I touch these aspects of space science, of geography, of different fields. Believe me, guys, I'm a professional space scientist trained in 2013 by the one and only Space Science Center in Nigeria. All right, so I understand what I'm talking about. So if you are related to this, you also understand that this will fetch you something. And if it's for opener. It will help you to make your day-to-day activities decision. All right, see you on the next video, and please subscribe to Mission Art channel for more uploads.